Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode on the rusty T4 restoration. As you can tell from the title of the video, in this one we're going to be tackling the sill on the driver's side of the van. We're going to be repairing both the inner and the outer sill. So you can see the inner sill was going quite bad just along that bottom section. But the outer sill, particularly in this section where it meets up to the driver's step, is in really bad condition. And as we run down the rest of the panel, you'll see it's going in a few other places as well. So I picked up a repair panel from Central Panels. Unfortunately, you can only get these for the left-hand side of the van. So they're made for European vans that typically have the sliding door on the right hand side. You can still use the panel, however, you just need to modify the sort of lower end sections just to make it fit a little bit better. So at this point I've cut out the rotten outer section of the sill and I'm just assessing sort of what's left of the inner sill. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't look too bad at all. As I mentioned before, it's going quite bad just along the bottom sections, particularly in these corner parts. And this part appears to be the worst, where it meets up to that driver's step section. The pillars look pretty decent. This one just needs a bit of a clean up and a good spray of epoxy primer, but structurally it's still quite solid. So this corner section is actually split, you can see there from the rust, so I'm going to have to repair that. And there's two drainage holes on the inner sill. This one is not too bad. However, this one here has obviously been a bit of a moisture trap and it's rusted right through. So it's time to start putting some structure back into this inner sill. So I've started by building up that sort of middle lower section, and now I'm starting to build up those corners as well. So the next step on this corner is to chop out and clean out the rest of that rust. Now obviously it does meet up with the driver's step section, so it's likely that I'm going to have to cut out quite a decent chunk of that in order to get access to that rusty bit to make the repair. Now I'm going to save this repair on the driver's step for another video, but I'll just quickly show you some of the rust that I'm going to have to deal with. It's going in much and such the same places as it was on the passenger side. So as you can see there, I'd cut out most of the rot from that driver's step, which has given me good access to this corner section, which I've now plated up. I've also cleaned up that pillar, that's came up quite nice, and everything's ready now to get a good spray of epoxy primer to protect it. This also gives me a good surface to weld the outer sill repair panel that I've got. So at this point I've tacked it in. I've drilled a bunch of holes along the bottom so that I could spot weld it to that inner sill section that I've just created. It's now fully welded in and I've ground all the welds back as far as I could. Here's a comparison from the old against the new. It's now looking much more solid. So where it joins up to that rear quarter, I've just basically ran some weld right where there was factory sealant, or there was a factory bead of sealant. So I welded right down that seam and I've managed to ground it back such that I could probably run another bead of sealant along that if I wanted to. In general, the panel was quite a good fit. There's a bit of fettling up at the sort of top section to try get the the rest of that sort of side quarter flush with the repair panel. So here's a view from inside the van. I had quite a rotten section of floor just in there, so that was all cut out and cleaned back, but what that did give me was good access to the inner sill. Now at this point I've just gave the repair a skim of filler and I've flattened that back. You can see those bottom sections that I mentioned that you'll need to sort of cut and re-weld and sort of patch up just to make the panel fit a bit better for sort of right-hand drive vans. So at this point I'm quite happy with it. I've flattened it back as much as I've wanted to, and I've just gave it all a good coat of epoxy primer just to protect it. And at this point I can consider the repair done. I've also went underneath in the van there and I've sort of cleaned back the inner sill as much as I could. You can see that bottom section where I originally patched it up, and I've also patched it just along that top where it butts up to the new floor sections that I've put in. You'll see those in a future video as well. And obviously I've just gave everything a good coat in epoxy primer, and that's the repair.